behalf of the Raza Foundation and the CSOI, we welcome you this evening to our running series here called Art Dialogues. We're particularly grateful to the few who have turned up in spite of other distractions and impediments which has prevented the others from coming. This is the thinnest audience we ever had here. Writers as we are used to having no audience. And this is not a particularly new phenomenon.
Used to having no audience.
I mean, in the sense, we had great evidence of this having happened to Bhuti and to Vyas, who both lamented that they're raising their hands and saying maybe
austerity will
austerity there will be कुछ समान धर्म क्योंकि पृथ्वी विपुल है और काल निरवधि है. So we are used to it. But anyway, that's not the point. We have actually Keki Darwala was also to be there, and unfortunately he's not able to make it. He has to go out. So we have two other persons. One is PARANJAPE, who besides being a writer also teaches in JNU and has written recently, not so recently, but a very important book on Gandhi's death, which appeared about a couple of years ago.
Yes.
He, of course, is a teacher, but has enjoyed reading and would talk about the pleasures of reading. Udayan Vajpeyi is my youngest brother. I'm Ashok Vajpeyi. I was a civil servant of some dubious distinction, and he teaches physiology in a medical college in Bhopal, but is a writer, also interested in other arts, and has done some work with filmmakers like Manikol and Kumar Shani. To put the matters in a context, it is all too often said that we are not living anymore in a reading age. We are living in a viewing age. Everything is being viewed rather than being read. And of course it is being said that this all happened in, we are the great imitators anyway, so it happened in the West and now it's happening here. Now some of us have the occasion to go to the West every now and then, and some of us do visit the bookshops, and there's such a huge crowd there. You have to stand in foils in London in a queue to pay your bill, because the queue is so long and it takes time. So this whole notion that, and then I read an Italian philosopher who said that we all too often decry the big malls with big bookshops which are only selling popular literature and kish. But then he added that if you look at the figures, even Proust and Chekhov and Kafka are selling more now than ever before.
Yes.
And if they are selling more, which means serious literature is being read in spite of all the impediments to that phenomena. Now reading is a lonely activity, in spite of the fact that there are sometimes community readings. You can have poetry reading or somebody reading fiction, other people listening. But normally it's a lonely matter, you and the book. And that can have all kinds of interesting dialogues and relationships. I, for one, for instance, in spite of the services of Amazon or whatever they are called, can never buy a book online I must see the book, feel the book. It's, it's a sensuous existence. I can't imagine the book and just get it by that sort, or read that on the, what is it?
Kindle.
Kindle. All that. Although they are all valid ways of reading, I'm not decrying them. I'm being an old animal, I'm not used to those kinds of habits. But reading, although done in a lonely manner, makes you feel the other. And the other is all kinds of other. It is the other experience. It could be an experience that you never had. It could be other location, meaning places which you had never been to. It could mean other people whom you had never imagined existed. It could mean many things which you can lump together in the other. Although it is a lonely activity, it strangely puts you in contact with the community at large, with reality at large, or reality which then walks into your room through a window, and the book is the window. It gives you a new sense of reality. It expands your sense of reality. Whatever you thought was real, that there is much more to reality than you knew. You discover other people, other locations, other experiences, etc. And not more than this, but importantly, you also discover what language can do. See, we all are language using animals. That's what differentiates us with the other animals. And that language can do what wonders. It can, words which you had never used, you had never thought, they don't come into your daily parlance, they are not part of your daily life, become all of a sudden glow. And words which you never imagined existed. I was translating a Polish poet, a great Nobel Award winner, Czesław, and he uses a very specific Christian church vocabulary. Now I thought I'll have to give it up because in Hindi it will be difficult to, communicate. I looked up the dictionary and I found that in my language words existed about these things which I did not know. So through translation I discovered my own language. I mean, the depth and the expanse of my own language. So there are very interesting things that can happen to you. And some of these words then become iconic. They almost become proverbs. Shakespeare says, to be or not to be. Now that has become Prince of Denmark. I mean, any number of phrases from Shakespeare can be, just as in our case, sayings of utterances of Kabir or Tulsi or whoever also become popular, almost proverbs. So that is also another way when the pleasure is shifted. And sometimes you use these entirely out of context. You may use it in a different, give it a different meaning. The third point, and I'll shut up, I'm a talkative man. These two. The third thing that happens, hopefully happens, is that you become a more civilized person when you read. And the civilizing agency of reading comes from the fact that it puts you in contact, in dialogue with many others whom you had never imagined or have not adequately imagined to have existed, to have feelings, to have notions, to have ideas, and things of that kind. Literature makes, famously said by who? Oscar Wilde, that aesthetic truth is one whose contradiction is also true. So this notion that they are friends and enemies, that they are us and they. And again, Llosa, the Peruvian
Yes.
novelist in his Nobel lecture said that one of the lessons of literature is to make you realize that there are no others. Actually, you are them and they are us. Now, this is what it achieves as an existential, a larger level. And in that sense, you are a more civilized human being than if you had not read. Now, we have MAKARAD PARANJAPE, who is a very well-known figure, and perhaps will be more talkative than I am. And in any case, will have better things to say than I have. So, MAKARAD.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashokji. I was not very sure of the format of this art dialogue. So I was hoping that we would have a conversation, which I think we will.
We'll have. Yes.
But I'll just make a few initial opening comments.
Yeah.
When I saw the topic, pleasures of reading, I realized I'd started looking up a little bit on this, as I often do since I'm a teacher. I'm also in the habit of doing a little bit of research on these matters. And I was struck by how popular this topic, pleasures of reading, is in composition exercises, in English lessons. In fact, it's a standard topic for essay writing for English learners. Jaise, what I found was that, there are, if you go to the internet, there's a site, a portal called e-Virtual Guru. So there they've actually put up sample essays on the pleasures of reading, कि क्या क्या लिखना चाहिए जब आपको ये पूछा जाएगा. So, and this I will just quote because I found it very interesting, how people talk about this. Quote, books are our never failing friends. They are our constant and faithful friends. This is the 10th standard essay, model essay, sample essay on this website. They stand by us in our weal and woe. Our friends may leave us in the lurch, but books always stand by us. Our wealth may take wings, but our books always remain our lifelong companions. Unquote. I thought it was very nice. It was very nice for 10th standard kids. Usi tarah I found another blog spot called Essay Writing Blog Spot. Uspe bhi ek essay hai, and I found this very interesting because this second essay makes a distinction between the pleasures of reading and reading for pleasure.
Oh, very nice.
You see, what do you read for? And that is a nice segue for me to remember Francis Bacon, this famous English essayist, 1561, 1626. His short essays, all the essays are about 500 words, very short, very readable. And I suddenly remembered what he said. Some books should be tasted, some devoured, but only a few should be chewed and digested thoroughly. And then another thing Francis Bacon said, reading maketh a full man, conference a ready man, conference meaning the kind of discussion we have, and writing an exact man.
Wow.
And we were thinking about the exact humanities of our common friend Navjoti Singh. So this exactitude, so these are very deeply linked. We are all writers here. And I noticed that reading and writing are deeply interlinked.
Yes.
So if you're not a good reader, you can't be a good writer. This is my own experience, because you are your own most critical, if not best, reader.
Yes.
In fact, nobody else cares for your work as much as you should. And nobody else will read you the way you read yourself. So the reading skills that you develop become invaluable when you want to write anything. But, when we talk about topics such as pleasures of reading, only Americans write books on such topics.
Yes.
Indians are content to
Americans write books on everything.
write books on everything.
Yes.
How to read quickly, how to read slowly. This how to is a mini industry, because they are so hungry for self-help And self-help doesn't mean you help yourself. Self-help means you listen to somebody who will help you.
Yeah.
So this is one of those paradoxes. But I discovered that there are two books, called The Pleasures of Reading. And both were written in recent times. The first is called The Pleasures of Reading in an Ideological Age. I thought this was very interesting. And this was first published by Norton in hardcover in 1989. And Norton is a very respectable publisher. The author is Robert Alter, who is actually a professor. And why is this important? Because when you talk about pleasures of reading, you should also think about the enemies of pleasure.
Yes.
And we have a lot in our own country. So if you're enjoying anything, they feel very anxious, whether they're on the left or ultra left or even on the right or ultra right. They don't want anybody to have a good time.
Yes.
And they become very suspicious of pleasure. And my colleague has written a book called The Audacity of Pleasure, that somehow seeking and giving pleasure is an almost revolutionary activity in today's times.
Yes.
And so this whole book, The Pleasures of Reading, is actually about all those aspects which are anti-aesthetic in our lives.
Yes.
And I'm reminded of Harold Bloom. Harold Bloom was a very famous professor.
American, yes.
Wrote hundreds of books, Yale professor. And when all of these, there was a great moment in the American Academy when theory invaded America. And you started creating, reams and reams of books and books of bookshelves, on theory.
Yes.
And so Harold Bloom wrote, a book in which he talked about the enemies of pleasure. And there he mentioned 5 types of criticism, which are all very politically correct. So deconstruction, then he brought in feminism, Marxism, and 2 others, I can't remember what they were, historicism. But he said all these are so, in some ways, you might say earnest, if not fanatical, about programmatic reading, that only reading that results in some great change in the real world is supposed to, alter class relations, or you're supposed to bring about some lasting change in the world.
Yes.
So the classroom itself is a part of some larger master narrative. You're heading towards, participating in some grand design in which you can, alter the human condition.
Yes.
And people who are so pregnant and so purposeful with such ideas, they invade the classrooms and they browbeat us and make us really distrust any pleasure that we derive from literature. And so Harold Bloom says that if you wanted to do all this, why are you in a literature classroom?
Yes.
You should have gone and done something more meaningful. So to rehabilitate pleasure in a time of ideology is a very important thing.
Yes.
Because you're resisting these paradigms where you have collapsed the aesthetic to the ideological, which is a very bad thing. And I teach at a university where this is how people look at literature. Literary taste is a matter of political correctness almost.
Yes.
So then I ask, but did you like the novel? Did you enjoy it? And when I say did you enjoy it, the eyebrows go up. Because enjoyment is something you should distrust.
Yes.
So this book I found interesting, The Pleasures of Reading in an Ideological Age. And then I found another book which speaks directly to what Ashokji was saying, The Pleasures of Reading in an Age of Distraction by Alan Jacobs, and published by a very respectable New York, Oxford University Press, New York publisher. And here you see what Alan Jacobs is talking about is, again, this digital age where people have short attention spans, you're constantly distracted,
Yes.
right? You're tweeting, you're on Facebook. And to have a sustained period where you block out time, and also as Ashokji said, reading is very antisocial.
Yes.
And so is writing.
Yes.
There are millions of demands on you. And I remember Virginia Woolf wrote this beautiful essay in her collection called Room of One's Own.
Yes.
Where she talks about, for a woman to be a writer, you have to kill the angel of the house. So the angel of the house is somebody who's always saying, oh, your children need you, your husband needs you, the maid wants your instruction of what to cook. So what Virginia Woolf does, she has this imaginary encounter with the angel of the house, and she takes her ink pot, which is a very heavy ink pot, because in those days, we're talking about the 1910s and 15s, the ink pots were made with, there was a lot of lead content in the glass. तो वो अपना वो जो है ink pot लेके, she smashes it. She smashes this angel of the house, and so I began to think how every act of writing, every act of creativity is actually premised on a murder. कि किसी को एक कत्ल होता है, उसी के बाद लेखन या whatever कला, शिल्प कला या whatever it is we do. So this whole notion of the kind of secret murder that informs our creative endeavors really haunted me. So I wrote a novel which nobody knows or cares about. It's called The Narrator, and ये गुस्ताखी मैंने फिर repeat किया. I wrote another novel also, both published by Rupa, and I think both must have been read by a few people, a couple of dozens, I think. But वो narrator में यही होता है कि there's a kind of doppelganger. And then this person, he's so goody, that उसका एक baddie भी होता है. So he has to get rid of that goody for him to be able to write, because there's a censor sitting inside you who's always saying ये मत लिखो, ये मत कहो. And so in the glorious days of the New Yorker, they used to write with a bottle of bourbon in the closet because वो inhibition कम हो जाते हैं. You just write. But the thing, then I'll end, and then I want to listen to Udayan, who's a very deep thinker, apart from being a professor of pathology. I like one of the things that Alan Jacobs talks about. He makes a distinction between reading at whim and then deep attention reading. And I think both are necessary. Not all works demand deep attention reading. And they don't reward you also with deep attention reading. Reading at whim is also very enjoyable. And so let us not discount how we read at whim. This is again a little naughty or cheeky or, again Gustaki Maaf. But at JLF in the Author's Lounge, I happened to be sitting next to Sonal Mansingh ji. And she's just got a book out which has been written by a famous bureaucrat who's been her kind of partner in this exercise. And so and there was somebody sitting between us. So she said, क्यों मकरंद पढ़ी किताब, मेरी किताब पढ़ी? मैंने कहा हाँ, एक लिहाज से तो पढ़ डाली. So the other lady who was very earnest, so he said, what does that mean? Did you buy a copy? Did you order a copy? Shall I send you a review copy? I said, नहीं, मैंने खड़े पढ़ ली. So she was very offended. So she said, what does that mean? So I said, I was in a bookstore. वहाँ आपकी किताब डिस्प्ले पे थी, तो मैं वैसे ही थोड़ी सी पढ़ डाली,
वैसे वो खराब किताब है.
देखिए, आपने कह दिया, मैं कहना नहीं चाहता था. हाँ, क्योंकि मैं सोनल जी की बहुत इज्जत करता हूँ, लेकिन जिन्होंने किताब लिखी है उनके बारे में ज़्यादा कहना नहीं चाहता था. तो मैंने उनको कहा, मैंने ऐसे पढ़ डाली, तो उनको बहुत बुरा लगा. But that is reading at whim. That's also important. You get a feel for the book. You want to know whether it's worth the deep attention reading
or not.
And the last point I want to make, for my opening comments before I listen to you, is, I started thinking about this word pleasure with all its dubious connotations, And then I thought that अगर हमें एक और लफ्ज़ इस्तेमाल करना होता अपनी भाषा का, तो हम क्या कहते हैं? And I thought the real word would be रस.
रस. पढ़ने का रस.
पढ़ने का एक रस होता है, और वो उसका अगर आपको एक बार भी आस्वादन हो जाए, तो जीवन भर के लिए समझ लीजिए कि आप मतलब गए काम. And I still remember, how we read for many years I wanted to read War and Peace, for many years, and I could never finish it because it's such a fat book and it's very demanding.
Yes.
It has a theory of history in it. It has an account of the Napoleonic invasion of Russia. It is an account of the class society that Russia was.
Yes.
It's also a deeply spiritual book at one level.
Yes.
So it's a very demanding book, and I would start it and not finish it, and then finally I said there is one way to read it, and I'll tell you that, and then I will stop. I found myself, I had to go someplace, and in those days, traveling through Bangkok was convenient on Thai Airlines. So I was I think going to Australia or some other destination. तो मैंने ऐसे फ्लाइट ली कि बीच में मुझे about 14-15 घंटे मिले in Bangkok. And so you see, you're out of sort of communication. You're in a limbo between flights.
Yes.
It's not even 24 hours. You can't exit the airport. आपको वहीं है. तो वो lounge में मैं बैठा. I had a shower also. And then I read this War and Peace. And I tell you, I almost missed the flight. It was so wonderful. I finished the book also. I skipped a bit because, and then I realized that I so regretted finishing the book.
Yes.
Because I wanted to dwell in that world of War and Peace.
Yes, that's so beautiful.
So this, ये जो रस है, ये जो अनुभव है, पढ़ने का जो अनुभव है. So words create worlds.
Yes.
And then you inhabit these worlds.
Yes.
And then you sometimes don't want to exit these worlds of words.
Yes.
And enter into this world.
Yes, that's true.
Returning to our normal world is almost a diminution.
Yes, yes.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks. In fact, first I'll start by a small experience like Makarad's. I was first year medical student, and those days the ragging was immense. And ragging meant in medical college literally beating. And I was a very respected student of my school because I used to read a lot. I was some kind of a person who would talk about literature, philosophy and all that. When this beating started, I stopped going because I couldn't tell my bhabhi that I am not going to college. So I found a library, a British library, and I used to take book after book and would read there. And when I will be tired, I'll sleep there on the table, will wake up and read again. So years later, when my nephew went to that library to be a member, he said, I want to be a member. He looks very much like me. So the librarian asked, are you also mad like your uncle? Anyway, he talked about Ras. Now, I'll start by, in a sense, I want to re-describe what Ras is. Ras, ideally, in the tradition, Ras is a very important, very, very important keyword for the pleasure. And he very rightly said that the other word that you can use for anand, for pleasure or anand is ras. In fact, there is a word rasanand, the pleasure of the text, pleasure of enjoying a work of art. And the idea behind that pleasure is that at the time of the experience of ras, that you get rid of your individual ego. And you suddenly, and Abhinav Gupta, that 10th century very great thinker, I think one of the greatest intellectuals that was ever born, he says that at the time of experience of the ras, you become, your condition is aparimit pramatritva, that you become limitless witness. You are aparimit pramatritva, you become the universe to experience it. And this, this disappearance of the ras actually is the pleasure. Because then you experience your vastness, your so-called, your being becomes one with the being, That is the moment, and that's the ras. This is traditional understanding, and it's a great understanding. I thought that the pleasure that we have, all of us, is ultimately the pleasure is sourced in creation. When we create something, whatever we are creating, there is a pleasure. How does a reader create? I mean, because whatever you are creating, if you're cooking or if you're making a table or whatever, you are having pleasure. The pleasure is in creating. And so when you read, you create. But how do you create? And there I thought that the writer is the one who not only expresses himself or herself, in fact creates spaces for the reader to participate into that creation. So therefore, a lot of people, when they say that I have a great experiences, I can become writer, they are wrong actually. Because it's a very particular kind of mind which creates such thing, which created spaces, and those spaces are not fixed. They are flexible spaces. So you also create there, you also create. Whosoever enters into that, he or she starts participating into that creation. All poems, as one of my Kannada poet friend used to say, are half poems. So these, all poets write half poems. Why? Because the remaining, they leave for the reader to create. And this creation of a work of art, of a poem, gives pleasure. So this is the same play, because when you create, in fact, this ego falls down. There's no ego at that point. It's like dreaming, because my teacher used to say, Manikol used to tell me that if you go on telling yourself, I am sleeping, I am sleeping, I am sleeping, you can't sleep. You have to forget this I to finally fall to sleep. And so when you are creating, and readers create, if they participate into creating, of a work of art, and that gives you pleasure, and thereby, this is how now Ras can be redefined. That Ras is an experience when you experience in yourself somebody creating. So this whole phenomena, that whole experience of participating into the creation of a work of art, like MAKARAD was saying about War and Peace. War and Peace is so difficult to read because you have to really invest yourself greatly into that book. I mean, I remember when I used to read Dostoevsky, like his novel Idiot or Crime and Punishment, I used to feel exhausted. I mean, the 5-6 days in which you finished that, there were huge novels, and I was not on the Bangkok, 14 hours. So I used to feel completely, exhausted at the end of reading, because it takes a lot of you. You participate, and that's what gives you, great. Now, the greatest danger that we are facing now is that the television or internet and all, they are not allowing spaces for us to create. So now we are not readers, we are consumers, and consumers are essentially passive. Reading is a very active, is a very active thing. You enter into the text, you create that text. That's why it's possible that two people read a book and they come out with different readings, different understanding. So the ras, the anand, the word anand comes when you participate. So what, the ras, in some work of art, you get ras when this work of art allows you to create. And the greatest example of such a work of art is a haiku. You see, the haiku almost leaves the entire space for the reader to create. And therefore, one of the, I'll tell you one haiku, the most famous one. An ancient pond, or an old pond, frog jumps, splash. A frog jumps, splash. That's all. This is a haiku, and at least 1,000 commentaries are written on this. This is the most famous. I mean, if you go to Japan, if you say that I know one haiku, tell me what it is. He'll immediately or she'll immediately tell you that this is the haiku. And the reason is that the space left for the reader in that haiku to create is immense. So what happens is that you immediately start creating. It inspires you, it leaves that space for you to go on creating. And 1000, I mean, when you read or Makarand read or Akhilesh read, there will be multiple readings on and on and on. So therefore, reading is possible only of those texts. They are the great text. They need your attention, greater attention, a deeper attention. They create a certain, quality of attention where you have to participate into creating a work of art. It has to be written like that, therefore. So the writer, I mean, a lot of people say that, he has expressed himself very nicely. I mean, it might be a way of saying. But actually, the writer is somebody who leaves a space for the others to people that space. And then that's how he even or she even reads his own work or her own work. Becoming other to her own or his own work. And then creating. So, in a sense, you can say writing a poem is like playing a blind chess. It's like playing with the other person, imagined other person. So you leave those moves of the other, and when that reader enters into that work of art, he or she also starts creating. Now there is another very beautiful word about those who enjoy reading, and that's in Sanskrit is called Sahriday. Literal meaning is, I mean, in Sanskrit is a very, Sanskrit aesthetics is very dodgy. So apparent meanings are always cancelled. So someone with heart. But, Sahriday, if you translate it someone with heart, it means absolutely nothing, really. So, I found in Ghalib a very beautiful way of describing what Sahriday is. Of course, it's unintentional. Ghalib wrote his own poem. Sahriday concept was far away from that, and it so happened that I found a connection. Now, Ghalib, the sher is, the couplet is, Hasrate jalwaye saki hai ki har para-e abr, Sina betabi se milta hai batege kohsar. I'll tell you what it is. Hasrat is desire. So each piece of cloud is so desirous of the saki, the one who pours the wine, itna zada, I mean, so desirous of the saki that it is, the cloud, it is allowing the top of the mountain, which is like sword, to enter his breast. So now Ghalib is saying that if you can put your heart for a poem or for a work of art and allow it to be pierced by that sword of that poem, Sahriday is not one with heart. Sahriday is one who can present his heart to be pierced by the sword of that poem, so that your individual dies and your universal gets birth. You become what everything is. And to my mind, the way the Rasa is explained in tradition, also you are allowed by reading to undo the caste, creed, religions, everything that moment. There's no caste, you are everybody. So if you are, let's say, if you are a Kshatri, you are at that point, everyone, you are also shoemaker, you are carpenter, you are everybody. And this, this became so central in India because we are a country of arts and literature. I mean, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता भारत में जिसमें poetry नहीं होती हो, जिसमें गाना नहीं होता हो. मैं तो कई बार जोक भी करता हूँ कि बहुत सारे शहरों में पूरे वक्त रिकॉर्ड्स बजते रहते हैं. Because we don't have folk music, it has receded because we have created a modern society which actually destroys the communities and community, culture. So now we have a populist culture. The Deshi or the folk cultures are being replaced by popular culture, which is a very great tragedy. But then these popular music are being treated as folk songs. So you'll find everywhere. तो मैं कहता हूँ ये तो कृषि प्रधान नहीं, गान प्रधान देश है, सब जगह गाना गाते रहते हैं. बट व्हाई इज इट दैट? बिकॉज इनहेरेंटली वी वांट टू गेट रिड ऑफ दिस. We understood as a civilization, we understood that art takes us away from, all that, and you experience the world by becoming the world. You know, that's something wonderful about a work of, a book or a great poem or a great short story. Thanks.
No. I think we should throw it open, but I can't resist just a couple of comments on that very inspired, should I say, offering, in which there is some space for the listener since it was not written. So it's not so much blind chess since I'm your interlocutor sitting next to you, but I found these lovely spaces in which I think I should enter in the same spirit in which you opened up this topic in such a beautiful way. I think that, Udayan, what I was deeply moved by was your idea that reading is a form not only of co-creation.
Yes.
The writer is a creator, but the reader is a co-creator.
Yes.
But ultimately of co-being.
Yes.
Now, what is this co-being? I think this co-being is precisely the kind of coupling which we think in ordinary life also not only leads to pleasure but also to reproduction, you see.
Yes.
So this whole idea of reading and entering, all these metaphors of entering, reading, opening, piercing, they are in some ways deeply erotic.
Yes.
And that's why the pleasure of the text, which also Roland Barthes talks about,
Yes.
that there's a jouissance, there's a certain kind of friction that happens, And each word also, agar hum dekhen to, the swar and vyanjan mein bhi ek अजीब सा आलिंगन होता है और उससे इतनी ऊर्जा निर्माण होती है ना. And that's why I think that Abhinav Gupta says that this whole aesthetic delight is Brahmananda Sahodara.
Yes.
Now again this Sah Udara and Sah Hriday.
Yes.
You see Hriday or Udar means womb.
Yes.
में कितना गहरा संबंध है.
Yes.
You see, because
Beautiful.
if it's only the womb without the heart,
Yes,
and you see,
yes.
so this is the relationship that are ancient or rather medieval. And Abhinav Gupta, I should say, not Gupta.
Yes.
That's my Angrezi pun wahan aa jata hai. But Abhinav Gupta wrote this incredible book, Tantra Lok.
Yes.
Alok, that is the light of Tantra. जिसमें उन्होंने he's given such a comprehensive theory where in a sense self-transformation is so imbued with joy that it becomes aesthetic, that even the divine is something to be enjoyed.
Yes.
And therefore I think it all ties back to this experience of reading and how you brought in Ghalib, who was, I think one of the great modern figures of our civilization.
Yes.
And Ghalib's modernity is something that we should tease out, because if you compare him to our fanatic friends, he's so unorthodox.
Yes.
He questions, you see, the divine dispensation.
Yes.
And so forth. So Ghalib is a very modern figure for me, coming at the cusp of the end of that jo Mughal Samrajya tha and the beginnings of colonialism, and yet, and so was just Vedana hai, what Udayan was talking about, the destruction of our society,
Yes.
which Dharampalji also talks
Yes.
about, through colonialism. Ghalib was so aware of it,
Yes.
and he was able to give it a verse expression. And it seems to me, when he says, "Kya wo Namrud ki khudai thi, कि बंदगी में मुझे मेरा भला ना हुआ, मेरा अच्छा ना हुआ, भला ना हुआ." You see, so बंदगी में भी भला ना. So when you say ला ला इल्लल्लाह, मैं तो बंदा हूँ लेकिन बंदगी में भला ना हुआ. So you see, So just to finish, I think that I was trying to link up. Ghalib and Abhinav Gupta.
Yes,
you see?
yes.
And I was going to say really that even this idea of Saki,
Yes.
you know, the cup bearer, it's really Sakhi, because
Yes.
you see the intermediary between you and the divine is the
Yes,
Sakhi.
yes, yes. वाह.
ये जो अभी आप कह रहे हैं ना,
जी।
ये साकी और सच्ची वाली बात जो कर रहे हैं, ये ट्रेजेडी हो गई हमारी कल्चर के साथ। जो सोफिज्म में जो विकसित था ना सर,
Yes, yes,
ये जो वर्ड दोनों को मिला दिया।
हाँ.
अब आज के वक्त में आप ये बात करेंगे तो दोनों तरफ वाले आपके दुश्मन
तो हम वही लोग हैं, वो दोनों तरफ हमारे दुश्मन हैं।
और आप जैसे लोग हमारे लोग डरते डरते बातें करते नहीं,
हाँ.
यार क्या लेना है, और ये आदत है ना कि क्यों पड़ना है झगड़े में यार, पड़े लगा बात बनती नहीं।
To take back to the modernity of Ghalib, I've always been struck by this शेर, जौहरे तेग बसर चश्मे दीगर मालूम, हूँ मैं वो सब्जा के जहराब उगाता है मुझे, मैं वो सब्जा हूँ जिसको जहर का पानी उगाता है।
क्या
वाह वाह.
I mean to say this,
Yes, वाह वाह.
compare this to any modern utterance of the 19th century in Europe.
Yes.
Who was saying this? I mean, this is so Baudelairean.
Baudelairian, actually. I was
And he was before Baudelaire.
Yes, yes. He was before that. That's true.
हूँ मैं वो सब्जा के जहराब उगाता है
क्या बात।
और पहले में भी वही इमेज, वही तेग
देखा. तलवार.
तलवार।
जोहर उसकी लाइन है.
Sorry, could you explain that?
Yes, of course.
Could you
Explain,
that
explain.
Urdu couplet
नहीं
was?
देखिए, जौहरे तेग यानी ये जो तलवार की धार की चमक है, बसर चश्मे दीगर मालूम, वो उसका सोर्स क्या है ये तो पता नहीं, मुझे तो नहीं पता, मतलब व्हाट ही सेइंग कि हमें नहीं मालूम कि इस तलवार की जो धार पर जो चमक है वो कहाँ से आई है। इतना मैं जानता हूँ कि मैं तो वो सब्जा हूँ जिसको जहर का पानी उगाता है।
What does sabza mean?
हाँ?
What does sabza mean?
Vegetation? Vegetation.
Green plant. I am
Like
a
sabzi.
plant.
Like
Sabzi.
A green plant which is fed or nourished
The poisonous water.
by
Poisonous.
poisonous water.
I think that's the kind of palak we now eat, you know.
Incidentally,
And then you have to.
another festival called Words and Garden takes place in Litfest in India International Center.
Yes,
yes.
And I was its advisor. So the first year we had, last year it's called Mir Ki Dilli. And this time it was Ghalib Ki Dilli.
वाह वाह.
But apart from things on Ghalib, what I have done is we have picked up misras of Ghalib and make them talk about contemporary times. टाइटल उसका गालिब से है,
बहुत बढ़िया.
होता है शबो रोज तमाशा मेरे आगे। तो मैंने कहा कि हम जो हमारे ज़माने में जो तमाशे हो रहे हैं उन पर बात करेंगे, गालिब पे नहीं करेंगे, पर टाइटल वहाँ से। दूसरा है कि ऐ परतबे खुर्शीदे जहाँ ताब इधर भी साये की तरह हम पे अजब वक्त पड़ा है।
वाह।
तो अजब वक्त,
हाँ,
तो
क्या
this is
बात।
one of the titles। फिर एक है कि गम हस्ती का असर कुछ नहीं जुज मर्ग इलाज,
शम्मा हर रंग में जलती है सहर होने तक।
तो गम हस्ती, द पेन ऑफ बीइंग, तो उसमें एक कश्मीरी आर्टिस्ट भी आ रहा है who had gone through a lot of, so there is a pain of being in Kashmir and other kinds of things. So this like, so if you look at, if you're reading, you're not reading that time, you're also reading your own time.
Yes.
Because that's what the reading, कबीर और तुलसीदास और शेक्सपियर, ये तो सब हमसे 500-700 और संस्कृत के तो और पुराने हैं, 2000 साल पहले, 2500 साल पहले, 1500 साल पहले। पर उनको पढ़ने पर देयर वाज अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग बुक। हम जब सेंट स्टीवेंस में एमए करते थे तो एक
किताब आई शेक्सपियर अवर कंटेम्प्रेरी, एंड एक वो था, ही वाज a Polish director, तो उसने जो किताब
Shakespeare in
our contemporary.
Shakespeare our contemporary, that was the book, and the book had read Shakespeare's history plays as kind of studies in political power.
वो ग्रोटोस्की का लियर भी कितना फेमस था।
तो
Yes.
ये जो है पढ़ना, आप जब किसी पहले वाले को पढ़ रहे होते हैं, अच्छा उर्दू में एक बड़ा विचित्र है, वो अगले शब्द का इस्तेमाल करते हैं जबकि मतलब होता है उनका पिछला। अगले वक्तों के हैं ये लोग, इन्हें कुछ न कहो। अगले वक्त यहाँ मतलब आने वाला वक्त नहीं है, पिछले वाला वक्त, पिछले वक्तों के हैं ये लोग, तो वो पिछले नहीं कहते, अगले कहते हैं।
तो बिल्कुल उत्तर आधुनिक है।
देयर मस्ट बी सम फीलिंग कि हम तो आगे ही होंगे।
Yeah.
तो
क्या
जब आप ये पढ़ रहे होते हैं तो आप यू मेक दैट ऑथर, particularly if you are enjoying, you're not enjoying, you are going to reject him or her anyway, but if you are enjoying, you are making him or her your contemporary.
Yes.
And that's also one of the, this you are doing unknowingly. इतने लोग रामचरितमानस हमारी माँ रखती थी, उसी की पूजा करती थी। और रामचरितमानस तो आज से 450 साल पहले लिखा गया। How is it relevant today? कबीर, I mean 600 साल। तो you know, it is not merely that you cut across time, you bring that time into your time,
Yes.
and thereby create another dimension to your own time.
Yes.
So it's a very, but सुनिए, आप में से कुछ लोग कहें तो पूछना चाहें। Please, ये माइक ले लें, हम लोग रिकॉर्ड कर रहे हैं।
You dying people. I don't even dare.
No.
It's been wonderful to hear you. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
आपके मतलब आई मे बी अलॉट टू
Please.
Go ahead.
गालिब के बात,
जी।
गालिब ने उसने में ये कह दिया कि तुम शहर में हो तो हमें क्या गम, जो मरेंगे।
So why don't you introduce yourself?
तुम शहर में
हो
तो गम क्या बुझेंगे, ले आएंगे।
तो मुझे क्या गम, हमें क्या गम कि मरेंगे, ले आएंगे बाजार से जाके दिलोजा और तो इट्स अ सटायर एज यू सेड ऑफ द प्रेजेंट
ऑफ कोर्स
टाइम, कि हम दिल्ली में बैठे हुए, आप और मेरी उम्र के मतलब माशाल्लाह लोग ये सोचते रहते हैं कि यार गांव जाएंगे तो हॉस्पिटल बड़ी दूर होगा यार, है ना सर? तो हमें मेडिकल फैसिलिटी के आसपास रहना है, ये एक मेंटालिटी है सभी की है। लेकिन वो गाली में फिर भी कह दिया कि खरीद लाओगे क्या, जब आई जाएगी थाली तो क्या कर लोगे। जान तो खरीद कर आ नहीं सकते ना, बट ही इज कटिंग अ स्टाइल कि तुम जो दिल्ली वाले हो तुम्हारा सब कुछ लुट चुका है। लेकिन
तो गालिब ने तो ऐसे बहुत सारी चीजें कही हैं, अब गालिब पर एक अलग सेशन करना चाहिए।
एक शेर मैं आपको सुना
हाँ जरूर।
ऐसा नहीं है, अहमद नदीम काशी का शेर है। वो कहता है कि रुतों के जबर से आजाद हो गया हूँ नदी। रुत बदलती है, उनका हेल्थ बदल जाता है। कहता है रुतों के जबर से आजाद हो गया हूँ नदी, खिजा में फलता हूँ, आंधियों में फलता हूँ। तो रीडिंग का वही शब्द है सर
जी,
वही वर्ड्स है। 26 अल्फाबेट इंग्लिश में है, संस्कृत में हिंदी में थोड़ा याद है, उसके बाद तरह बीच में डाल रखी है।
ठीक।
As you said, reading का एक अपना पहले है, no doubt about it.
Thank you,
sir. Thank you.
Anybody else ask anything? No. Thank you.
I'll just say one word that I want to tell, one very small thing, not much. You see, there are three kinds of pleasure that India talks, the tradition talks about, which is not there in Europe, which came only with Rona Bakht, as he referred. One is called Brahmanand, that is when you become one with the Brahm is, big, one word, and of course absolute and all that. Angrezi uska anuvad hai hi nahi, so we should not try. Second is Ratyanand, the pleasure of making love. And number 3 is Rasanand, Rasa ka Anand. This Rasanand was identified by Indian civilization much before than Europe. And these three Anandas, the common thing is that for that moment, you get rid of your individual self. You unburden yourself.
I want to say something there.
रस भी 9 रस छाप रखे हैं।
हाँ, बिल्कुल।
एक रस थोड़ी सा है। रस को ऐसे
नहीं,
This is a very important thing in my opinion, and maybe this is the note on which to conclude, which is it's not a question of escape from personality. That's the phrase that Eliot used in tradition and individual talent. And it is also not the transcendence of the ego, because that is how often Advaitins and others have looked at it. But it is breaking out into the vast from the narrow and limited confines of our daily self. And that implosion or explosion, I think, better illustrates the notion of pleasure than transcendence, which somehow seems to be either a denial कि भाई कोई दूसरा छोटा self है उसको खारिज किया जाए.
Breaks open that.
But that breaking open, and that's why I think that I mean, pardon my saying so, but that there is an orgasmic dimension to it.
Yes, of course.
Because it is. And this is also in Kashmir Shaivism. It's not because that's when the individual breaks into something beyond themselves. Even if it is a coupling, because even a coupling is, after all, it's the aspiration to break free of your own narrow individuality. You know. So I think if one sees reading in that sense and then ties it up with ties it up with that kind of pleasure, which is not to be trivialized. It's not simply a kind of profane pleasure. It's not just carnal in the way in which the West divides these things. But there is actually such a sacred dimension to it, I think.
Yes, true.
Which is what we've tried to bring in.
In our case, the dichotomy between the sacred and the sensuous, between the physical and the metaphysical, did not exist.
That's true.
We have thought of the universe being born out of Leela, which is making love between Brahma and whoever.
Another version of himself. Which reminds me one last thing. You know, when one reads the Kama Sutra, which we don't read, unfortunately, what we do is we pick up these summaries and but there is a wonderful argument in favor of pleasure. That's how the book starts. Vatsyayan starts with that. Because you see, after all, dharma, arth, kam, तो cardinal, these were our purusharthas, त्रिवर्ग. तो धर्म और अर्थ के बारे में बहुत लिखा था, because of अर्थशास्त्र, नीति शास्त्र. But काम शास्त्र also, you see, this is the only civilization where basically Vatsyayan is saying that काम will take you
to moksha.
Who is saying it?
Yes.
You see, I think this is very profound.
Yes.
But that calm cannot be just ordinary. It has to be refined. So the whole of Kama Sutra is the refining of that urge, which even animals and plants have. But only in humans can it be refined. So that it's taken to a level where it can yield something much higher, which can be akin to Brahmananda Sahodara.
Okay, with that we come to an end. Thank you very much. And your own photograph.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see this. I was happy enough.
This is of course
happy enough with this.
Instead of giving you flowers and such like.
नहीं, इसमें तो अब आत्मरति हो जाएगा. You know, narcissism, where you look at yourself and say, oh wow. But anyhow, Udayan, let's click. Thank you so much, Ashokji. You know, everything he does is touched by something so creative, you know. अभी तक मुझे बहुत से मग मिले हैं, लेकिन इस टाइप का नहीं मिला. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I keep on leaving the mugs. वो JLF में भी बहुत मिलते हैं.
हाँ, मिलते हैं.
तो मैं अपने होटल के कमरे में छोड़ाता हूँ. क्या करें उनको ले जाकर?
सही बात है. क्या किया जाए? But you can give it to somebody. They can pretend they went to jail.
I leave it to the waiters.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.